Chapter 18 The Cool of the Evening. In the cool of the evening, when shadows darkened the fairgrounds, Templeton crept from the crate and looked around. Wilbur lay asleep in the straw. Charlotte was building a web. Templeton's keen nose detected many fine smells in the air. The rat was hungry and thirsty. He decided to go exploring. Without saying anything to anybody, he started off. "Bring me back a word," Charlotte called after him. "I shall be writing tonight for the last time." The rat mumbled something to himself and disappeared into the shadows. He did not like being treated like a messenger boy. After the heat of the day, the evening came as a welcome relief to all. The Ferris wheel was lighted now. It went round and round in the sky and seemed twice as high as by day. There were lights on the midway, and you could hear the crackle of gambling machines and music of the merry-go-round and the voice of the man in the Beano booth calling numbers. The children felt refreshed after their nap. Fern met her friend Henry Fussy and invited her to ride with him in the Ferris wheel. He even bought a ticket for her, so it didn't cost her anything. When Mrs. Arabelle happened to look up into the starry sky, she saw her little daughter sitting with Henry Fussy and going higher and higher into the air, and saw how happy Fern looked. She just shook her head. My, she said. "Henry Fussy, think of that." Templeton kept out of sight. In the tall grass behind the cattle barn, he found a folded newspaper. Inside it were leftovers from somebody's lunch. A doubled ham sandwich, a piece of Swiss cheese, part of a hard-boiled egg, and the core of a wormy apple. The rat crawled in, ate everything. Then he tore a word out of the paper, rolled it up, and started back to Wilbur's pen. Charlotte had her web almost finished when Templeton returned, carrying the newspaper clipping. She had left a space in the middle of the web. At this hour no people were around the pig pen, so the rat and the spider and the pig were by themselves. "I hope you brought a good one," Charlotte said. "It is the last word I shall ever write." "Here," said Templeton, unrolling the paper. "What does it say?" asked Charlotte. "You have to read it for me." "It says humble," replied the rat. "Humble," said Charlotte. "Humble has two meanings. It means not proud. It means near the ground." "That's Wilbur all over. He's not proud and he's near the ground." "Well, I hope you're satisfied," sneered the rat. "I'm not going to spend all of my time fetching and carrying. I came to this fair to enjoy myself, not to deliver papers." "You have been very helpful," Charlotte said. "Run along if you want to see more of the fair." The rat grinned. "I'm going to make a night of it," he said. "The old sheep was right. This fair is a rat's paradise. What's eating and what's drinking, and everywhere good hiding and good hunting. Bye-bye, my humble Wilbur. Farewell thee, Charlotte, you old schemer. This will be a night to remember in a rat's life." He vanished into the shadows. Charlotte went back to work. It was quite dark now. In the distance, fireworks began going off, rockets scattering fireballs in the sky. By the time the Arabelles and the Zuckermans and Lurvy returned from the grandstand, Charlotte had finished her web. The word humble woven neatly into the center. Nobody noticed it in the darkness. Everyone was tired and happy. Fern and Avery climbed into the truck and lay down. They pulled the Indian blanket over them. Lurvy gave Wilbur a forkful of fresh straw. Mr. Arabelle patted him. "Time for us to go home," he said to the pig. "See you tomorrow." The grown-ups climbed slowly into the truck, and Wilbur heard the engine start, and then heard the truck moving away in low speed. He would have felt lonely and homesick had Charlotte not been with him. He never felt lonely when she was near. In the distance he could still hear the music of the merry-go-round. He was dropping off to sleep. He spoke to Charlotte. "Sing me that song again about the dung and the dark," he begged. "Not tonight," she said in a low voice. "I'm too tired." Her voice didn't seem to come from her web. "Where are you?" asked Wilbur. "I can't see you. Are you in your web?" "I'm back here," she answered, "up in the back corner." "Why aren't you in your web?" asked Wilbur. "You almost never leave your web." I left it tonight, she said. Wilbur closed his eyes. Charlotte, he said after a while, do you really think Zuckerman will let me live and not kill me when the cold weather comes? Do you really think so? Of course, said Charlotte. You are a famous pig, and you are a good pig. Tomorrow you will probably win a prize. The whole world will hear about you. Zuckerman will be proud and happy to own such a pig. You have nothing to fear, Wilbur, nothing to worry about. Maybe you will live forever. Who knows? And now, go to sleep. For a while there was no sound. Then Wilbur's voice. What are you doing up there, Charlotte? Oh, making something, she said. Making something as usual. It's something for me, asked Wilbur. Is it something for me, asked Wilbur. No, said Charlotte. It's something for me, for a change. Please tell me what it is, begged Wilbur. I'll tell you in the morning, she said. When the first light comes into the sky and the sparrows stir and the cows rattle their chains, when the roosters crow and the stars fade, when early cars whisper along the highway, you'll look up here and I'll show you something. I'll show you my masterpiece. Before she finished the sentence, Wilbur was asleep. She couldn't tell by the sound of his breathing that he was sleeping peacefully, deep in the straw. Miles away at the Arabelle's house, the men sat around the kitchen table eating a dish of canned peaches and talking over the events of the day. Upstairs, Avery was already in bed asleep. Mrs. Arabelle was tucking Fern into bed. Did you have a good time at the fair? She asked as she kissed her daughter. Fern nodded. I had the best time I have ever had anywhere or any time of my whole life. Well, said Mrs. Arabelle, isn't that nice? Chapter 19. The Egg Sack. Next morning, when the first light came into the sky and the sparrows stirred in the trees, when the cows rattled their chains and the roosters crowed and the early automobiles went whispering by along the road, Wilbur awoke and looked for Charlotte. He saw her up overhead in the corner near the back of his pen. She was very quiet. Her 8 legs were spread wide. She seemed to have shrunk during the night. Next to her, attached to the ceiling, Wilbur saw a curious object. It was a sort of sack or cocoon. It was peach-colored and looked as though it were made of cotton candy. Are you awake, Charlotte? He said softly. Yes, came the answer. What is that nifty little thing? Did you make it? I did indeed, replied Charlotte in a weak voice. Is it a plaything? Plaything, I should say not. It's my egg sack, my magnum opus. I don't know what a magnum opus is, said Wilbur. That's Latin, explained Charlotte. It means great work. This egg sack is my great work, the finest thing I have ever made. What's inside it? Asked Wilbur. Eggs. 514 of them, she replied. 514, said Wilbur. You're kidding. No, I'm not. I counted them. I got started counting, so I kept on, just to keep my mind occupied. It's a perfectly beautiful egg sack, said Wilbur, feeling as happy as though he had constructed it himself. Yes, it is pretty, replied Charlotte, patting the egg sack with her 2 front legs. Anyway, I can't guarantee that it is strong. It's made out of the toughest material I have. It is also waterproof. The eggs are inside and will be warm and dry. Oh, here's a picture. Charlotte, said Wilbur dreamily. Are you really going to have 514 children? If nothing happens, yes, she said. Of course, they won't show up till next spring. Wilbur noticed that Charlotte's voice sounded sad. What makes you sound so downhearted? I should think you'd be terribly happy about this. Oh, don't pay any attention to me, said Charlotte. I just don't have much pep anymore. I guess I feel sad because I won't ever see my children. What do you mean you won't see your children? Of course you will. We'll all see them. It's going to be simply wonderful next spring in the barn cellar with 514 baby spiders running around all over the place. And the geese will have a new set of goslings and the sheep will have their new lambs. Maybe, said Charlotte quietly. However, I have a feeling I'm not going to see the result of last night's efforts. I don't feel good at all. I think I'm languishing, to tell you the truth. Wilbur didn't understand the word languish and hated to bother Charlotte by asking her to explain.